Hello and welcome to Big Deal. I'm Nisha Poddar. Now, the retail sector in India is at an inflection point with a strong focus towards an omni-channel approach, which is a combination, remember, of online and offline platforms. Now, two important trends on this have been mergers and acquisitions for acquiring the digital capabilities, so acquisitions to transform the company. And the second, the valuation uptick because of the strong force created by this combination. And big announcements to both these themes have really happened in this particular week. So let's discuss with the industry experts now. Joining me on the show are Rahul Arora, the CEO of Nirmal Equities. He's right here with me in the studio. And also joining us is an industry veteran, Lalit Agarwal, the founder and MD of V-Mart Retail. Gentlemen, so good to have you on CNBC-TV18. Now, starting with you, Lalit, what do you make of the big announcements and the game-changing moves really taking place in the industry? Just yesterday, we have got the announcement of Reliance Retail acquiring the valuation of $100 billion with QIA investments. So the foreign investors are really ascribing a lot of value with this omni-channel and the retail thrust in India. What does it mean for the sector?
Hi, Nisha, and this is definitely one of the very, very good news for the retail industry as a whole, because we definitely, all of us understand the potential of India and potential of Indian consumer, and also the potential of the consumerism which Indians have. So I think, and then the growth that we are able to see in the consumer aspirations and consumer mindset, and the amount of the rural population and the rural audience or the consumers that we have, who is still not accessible to a lot of fashion and who is not still accessible to a lot of product and experiences. So with all of these announcements coming in, it definitely brings in and gives you a lot of...
All right, we'll get back. That network is patchy, but Rahul is right here with us. So he was quite euphoric about the kind of valuations, and of course, the overall sector could be re-rated if more and more investors ascribe this kind of valuation to the sector. Now, Rahul, you have looked at the consumption sector for so long. At this moment, how do you see it developing, and what are the trends that are really picking up?
So first off, Nisha, thank you for having me on your show. I think the trend setting was sort of done about 2 or 3 years back, when I think Reliance had raised money from Saudi, from RDI, etc. I think the valuation then was $50 billion. Now it's doubled. I think the one thing that has changed in a very seminal fashion, Nisha, is the kind of consumption story that has emerged post-COVID. Lalitji's point is so well made that everyone knows the India story, but the kind of demand that you're seeing for aviation, hotels, QSRs, electronics, I think this has never been seen. The potential was always there, but post-COVID, I think the way it has unleashed itself. And then you have a lot of players who are in the consumer electronics and similar allied spaces that are setting up manufacturing facilities here. iPhone 15 is going to be assembled in India. So I think retail now is, as your introduction or lead said, is at an inflection point. This valuation doesn't surprise me. It's not exorbitant, but obviously the headline is $100 billion, so it becomes the third or fourth most valuable company in India, one of which is the parent. So I think, Nisha, the one thing that people need to keep in mind is, as far as this valuation is concerned, is this is actually 50% of Reliance's market cap now. So Reliance's market cap is about 17.5 lakh crores. This deal values retail at about 8.7 lakh crores. So I think, tongue-in-cheek, if I may, even though I know it's a promoter entity, the timing is quite interesting ahead of the AGM. I don't know if there'll be a listing announcement at some point, or at least a talk about a roadmap for this, because you have some very marquee investors. But look, Nisha, this is a $1 trillion industry, retail. And e-com is what? About $70 to $100 billion. It's not even 10% right now. It's I was just reading some reports that are saying that India, by 2032, just the online is going to go from 70 billion to close to 950 billion to 1 trillion. So I think all the metrics are in order. And like I said, the valuations, I think we were discussing this off air as well.
Yes.
This is what, a 2.5-3 lakh crore top line company. So at 8.7 lakh crores, it's 3 times sales on a trailing.
Yeah.
Trent comes to you at about 8.5.
Yeah.
V-Mart comes to you at about 5.5. So
Yes.
when you start, Metro Shoes, which listed not too long back, comes to you at about 12-13 times
Yes.
price to sales. So the valuations are not exorbitant, but the value, just that number of $100 billion
Yes.
is something that we're not used to seeing in India. But you know, the timing couldn't have been better.
Of course, but Reliance Retail has also grown at a very scorching pace in the last few years. And as you rightly pointed out, the entire digital e-commerce space has really grown after COVID. Lalit Agarwal is back with us. So Lalit, you were making a point on what it means for the sector, and COVID led, the online approach has been sticky and now is becoming more and more important in your business.
Yeah, so one is the online approach. Definitely, digitalization is creeping into everyone's lifestyle and their shopping behavior and their overall user behavior. So I think definitely one is online, but also is the multi thought process or omni thought process, which is going to be multi-channel, because it's just not going to be online, but also offline. The aspiration level, the consumer is definitely wanting more and definitely wanting to consume from a retailer who have all the channels available. So that's one piece which is coming out after COVID, and which is what we are seeing, that there is a change in consumer behavior, a lot of digital adoption in terms of the way they pay, the way they research, the way they would now buy. And that's what we are able to see. And this is why both omni-channel means the physical experience as well as the digital experience. And how do we club together, wherein out of the 4 times that the consumer is buying in a year, maybe 3 times they buy offline and 1 time online. How do you make it enable? And how do you make the experience enabled also in your store with an omni mindset, and also when he's away from the store in the rural territory or in the at house, how does he have a similar experience like being in the physical store? So that's the overall approach which one has to see, and that's where it is just not giving the front end to the customer, but also making your team, making your processes, making your internal ways of analytics more compatible to this omni approach, and making your product ready for this omni approach. And those are some of the things which are very important. And that's the people or the companies who are able to do those, they are able to get those benefits, and definitely that's the future. And that's why valuations are being created and valuations are being paid by certain investors.
That's right, the phygital approach that we call it in the e-commerce, in the commerce space. But Lalit, I wanted to understand, even you have, acquired for this whole digital experience. What are the challenges as well as the synergies one must look at, or how does the entire synergistic process really pan out while adopting from one type of platform to another? Give us a sense of that.
I mean, see, Nisha, this definitely is the whole culture, and it is the whole theory of, thinking about business as a business. And because people who are deep into retail and offline retail or brick and mortar retail think the way consumer would behave in an offline manner. And people who are just doing online are thinking only in an online manner and a virtual manner. So how do you combine both the thoughts? And there are differentiated thought processes, because this is where in offline, where the customer is actually making an experience of the product, actually looking at it, actually trying it, actually visiting it, actually talking about the product. But when you are in the digital space, it is a different. And when you combine the two, it really brings out a unique problem areas, or brings in a unique opportunity, which becomes much more important in terms of whether you are defining the product, the kind of product that you specify, the cataloging of the product, how do you describe the product, how do you enable the customer about the product, and how do you make your search and the discoveries much more easier. And above all is about the communication. How do you communicate about the product? How do you talk to your customer? How do you enable it wherever, anywhere with the similar experiences?
Yes.
And try to see even the consumer continuity of experience in the same way, because that's also as important as this. Because there are challenges, because culturally people think only in one direction, and this is how departments are divided within retail. This is the brick and mortar team, this is the omni team, or this is the online team. And how do you merge both the team? How do you merge the mindset? How do you bring in the techno-functional mindset of each employee, each and every processes that you run. So those are some of the important things which becomes bottleneck for retailers, and those are the bottlenecks for retailers which one can't fulfill, whether they are online retailers or offline retailers. They both go through the similar experiences and similar problems, and that is why becoming an omni or a successful omni retailer has been for a very, very few retailers, because that is the most difficult proposition for retailers right now.
All right, very well pointed out, Lalit Agarwal, there, that it is not as easy, even though we talk about so many omni-channel companies and acquisitions. You have to also make sense of collaborating the two platforms as well. But Rahul, when you look at the companies, it has been reverse as well. It's not just that the old brick and mortar companies have bought digital capabilities like some of the big ones like Reliance and Tata, but somebody like Nike has gone into the offline space as well. They want to get their brands in airports and tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, and they are expanding on the store space as well. How do you see this trend as well? And some of the shareholders had raised concern about this as well. So how does one judge the valuation and analysis based on this?
You've raised two very important points, Nisha, and I'll give you data to support my answer. Nykaa doing what it's doing is very interesting, and the likes, because when you look at online consumption in India, mobile phones and electronics account for 53 and 44% of the total value of the goods sold online, right? So 53% of mobile phones sold in India are through online, 44% of electronics sold through India in India are through online. However, when you come to fashion, apparels, wellness, even furniture or home, all those are around 15-16%, which tells you that people even today, and now with online becoming a force to reckon with, still prefer for these 4 to 5 verticals to go to stores, as Lalitji was pointing out, the touch and feel of it, right? We may open an app of a clothing, whether it's a Reliance or a Zara or whatever, but we may see it on the app, but go to the store and try it out, right? So I think there is a huge opportunity in the offline space, because the online consumption, when compared to electronics and mobile phones, is probably at a third in terms of penetration of online sales. The second point that you make, I was reading some reports written by third-party consultants. 60% of the online sales that happened in the last completed calendar year, 2022, were in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Right. So Lalitji operates most of his stores in what we would probably call the Hindi heartland, right? So he obviously understands that metric far better than most people, myself included. But the point being, I think conventional retailers will have to adopt this, and new retailers who are coming in through the online will have to go offline. You can see that in the Titan Carrot Lane deal, right? Why would Titan acquire Carrot Lane when it's a behemoth? It's to look at new price points. Carrot Lane appeals to a totally different section of the consumer, the young boys and girls, new kinds of jewelry, for guys, bracelets and things. So all of that exists, right? Lever has gone ahead and made an acquisition of Oziva. ITC went ahead and acquired Yogi Bar. Marico acquired, somebody in the wellness.
All these are digital first.
Absolutely. So
brands,
these are either you do it. So it's like IT services, Nisha. So when India started going into digital, the TCSs and Infosys and Wipros of the world did not have the capability. So their first port of call was, chalo acquire karte hain. हम अपनी capability बढ़ाते रहेंगे. Let's at least go out there and start acquiring companies. So this may be the first port of call, but eventually systems will build up. So I think your point on tier 2, tier 3 is very well made, and I think that report also said that 80% of the incremental online sales between now and 2032 are going to come from tier 2, tier 3 cities. That's the kind of investment potential.
No, that's
so
where the aspirational Indian and Bharat is, which the digital,
but I think, for things that touch our skin, I think the offline experience is always going to be that much more value additive. And also, I think it's an entire experience, right? So, you look at a Metro Shoes, for example, right? That's done so well.
So
it's a retail player.
I take your point on that, but we'll get down to the numbers also. This is the customer acquisition cost, as well as what makes more sense when it comes to the margins. We'll talk about all that with Lalit and Rahul right after this short break on Big Deal. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal and we are discussing the omni-channel retail play and how it's reached an inflection point and what lies ahead. Lalit Agarwal is with us. Lalit, we discussed several aspects and the combination and collaborating between the two platforms. And it is still new, even though it's been happening for the last few years. I want to understand in terms of balancing the return matrices, the financial performance between the offline and online, how do you work out the right mix, and how much of a difference of customer acquisition cost and other important financial matrices make between the two platforms?
This is Nisha, this is right now the biggest challenge for the online retail world in India, especially, where we are seeing a very, very distorted culture, where customers have got real benefits from funded companies, private equity funded and funds driving those losses for their balance sheet, and they have been giving all those kind of easiness and comfort for the customers to do all sorts of mischievous things, which in terms of returns. So that's the biggest pain area for online retailer, and that's the biggest pain area even for the omni retailer, so as to say. But yeah, slowly and gradually, I think things are coming back to action. Most of the online companies are realizing it, and most of the funds are also tightening their funds towards positive growth and towards profitable growth. And that becomes a better opportunity for all the retailers now, because if there is a level playing field for all kind of retailers, then is the area where we can actually sustainably grow in a profitable manner. Today, there are returns up to between 20 to 35% for different kind of segment of product, especially in fashion. And that's the biggest pain area for most of the retailers in online. And that's the biggest cost also for your team. So that's the area which we are trying to work on. Largely, it is also dependent upon the retailer, and then it is dependent upon also upon the environment in which the retail is being done and how is the customer behaving in similar environment. So that's what we have to work on. To the point that you said here, I think it's more important that how do you increase the speed of product reaching the customer, and how do you increase decrease the cost of product reaching the customer. So that's where we use the V-Mart offline doors as the distribution center to the customer, and the nearest store to the customer should be the delivery point or should be the feeding point for the customer and for our store. So that's the algorithm that one has to work on, so that you become nearer to the customer and faster to the customer, so that customer do not change their mind or neither the cost is too high. So that's how you could actually bring in profitability, and that's the path that V-Mart is taking an approach after integrating with LimeRoad. And apart from that, on the customer acquisition piece, I think once you have told that you are an omni retailer, largely your offline customer, which is coming in, looking at the brand, which is looking at your trust level, looking at the kind of services that you have offered, the kind of quality that you have offered. So you have built a brand trust and you have built a brand persona. And how do you just take that persona to the online channel and give them a better opportunity through Omni, so that the customer now becomes a much more loyal customer to you, decreasing the cost of acquisition. Because if you just go for online acquisition, e-commerce acquisition, there is a huge acquisition cost, because you are definitely captured by all these mafias of online world, which is Facebook and Amazon and maybe Google. And how do you just cut down from that and build your own community? If you build your own community, you can actually bring down the cost of customer acquisition. That's what we do in the offline space, and that's what we need to replicate while we are getting into the omni space. And that's the opportunity area which the online retailer will have a very, very huge difficulty in getting on.
I think you figured what my next question was going to be, the intense competition. And of course, the big boys have really made their way to this particular space. So the competition is going to be very intense. Rahul, any final words on this discussion, the way forward for the consumption theme with the combination of both the platforms?
No, so I think Lalitji hit the nail on the head when he talks about brand being such an important centric mode of how you shop, right? So let's take Reliance for example. Burberry, Hugo, Bottega, Jimmy Choo. These are not brands. I mean, generally the consumer of these brands wants the store experience. So you may visually look at these stores on a Reliance app or a Tira app or whatever, but you will want to go and shop. Obviously, but
shopping in these stores, and I'm telling you with my personal experience, Rahul, is also an experience.
Exactly my point.
Talking about the big brands.
Exactly
and of
my
course,
point.
the margins are much higher, so they can have the brick and mortar stores.
Absolutely. So that was my point. So when you have brands like these, you want it to be more offline. You don't want it to be online. Similarly, there are portfolios within the Reliance brand where they'd want it to be more online, right?
Yes.
So I think the final point I'm trying to make, Nisha, is it eventually boils down to cash flows.
Yes.
Right? The established brick and mortar guys like Lalit ji and others in the business have the cash flows, so it's easier for them to go into online. The online guys are funded by private equity. You made the point some time back about Nykaa shareholders not being happy when they went offline. That's the challenge, because at the end of the day, it's return on equity and capital employed, road to profitability, road to cash flows. That's all that's important.
I think the startup world has learned their lesson on this particular thing, because buying customers, buying revenue and doing M&A, that is not the path. So I think path to profitability is well established now. And I would say that even though omni-channel approach really started some time back, this particular space is still noisy, and there will be some evolution of this particular sector to really separate the men from the boys, to get the right fit of that omni-channel approach. Thank you so much, Lalit Agarwal, as well as Rahul Arora, for joining us on this riveting discussion, and many, many big announcements coming in the retail space as the sector really evolves in the new age space. With that, it's a wrap on Big Deal. Thanks so much.